it's going to go behind the stomach and all the way over to the spleen to supply oxygenated blood to the spleen. There is a landmark about this splenic artery. You can see it going at least on the top of part of the pancreas. So this is the splenic artery as it travels to the spleen. Okay? So this one doesn't show. That's too bad. Well, when we come to another chart, I'll show you that again in a different way. All right, then the last branch of the celiac trunk is going to the right side of the right upper quadrant, and that's this common hepatic artery. And eventually it splits to both of the lobes of the liver, but you're only required to know this common hepatic artery. Off of it comes the right gastric artery, which you don't have to know. There's a duodenal artery that comes off that supplies the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. You do not have to know that. Okay? You just have to know common hepatic artery. Okay? All right, so I'm getting oxygenated blood to my liver through this common hepatic artery. But I also get deoxygenated but nutrient-rich blood to my liver by way of this purple thing, which is the hepatic portal vein. So it's bringing blood that came from the small intestines and part of your large intestines from this superior mesenteric vein. Okay. So this superior mesenteric vein is going to meet the splenic vein, and the inferior mesenteric vein drains into that splenic vein. So now when my splenic and my superior mesenteric come together, it forms this hepatic portal vein. Okay. So that's the pathway. The superior mesenteric artery is one of the next major branches off of the abdominal aorta. A lot of students think that this is the abdominal aorta. It's not big enough to be the abdominal aorta. Okay? And this superior mesenteric artery is going to, you can see the branches. It's got branch, 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 branch. And this superior mesenteric artery is going to supply the duodenum, parts of the jejunum, parts of the ileum, and indeed the entire first half of the large intestine. Okay? So it's helpful to know what these arteries supply, because when you see them giving off branches to these organs, then you know. Okay? All right. Always right next to the superior mesenteric artery is the superior mesenteric vein. Okay? And that is going to meet the splenic vein to form, what's that? The hepatic portal vein. So this drains venous blood into the liver, but nutrient-rich blood. And this blood mixes in the liver. And it goes through the sinusoidal capillaries of the liver, and eventually all of that blood, once the liver is done with it, is going to leave the liver by way of these vessels right here, which are the hepatic veins. Okay? So this is the hepatic portal vein. These are the hepatic veins. And the number varies. So Hannah might have 3, and Harrison might have 4, and Rebecca might have 8. Okay? So we don't necessarily ever say right versus left for those hepatic veins. And they drain into this huge vessel that's running along the back side of the liver. What's this huge vessel? The inferior vena cava. Okay, so let's look at that on this model. Okay. So orienting this model, I know my kidneys are retroperitoneal, so they're going to be in back. My spleen is in the left upper quadrant, so now I know how to orient the model. Okay? All right, so I can, if I look behind, then I see a whole bunch of activity, but what I'm going to tell you is the abdominal aorta is really deep, so it's about where my stick is. But coming off my abdominal aorta is a big trunk, and this trunk has 3 things coming off of it. So this trunk is the celiac trunk. The smallest thing to come off of the celiac trunk is the left gastric artery. The largest vessel that comes off the celiac trunk, and which also happens to run around along the top of the pancreas, that's your landmark, going all the way to the spleen, is the splenic artery. And the branch that goes to the right is the common hepatic artery. And it's going to supply blood to the liver. Okay? And the liver is going to be right about here. You're looking at this model from behind. Okay? All right. So also supplying blood to the liver is this hepatic portal vein. Okay? And it's a confluence of this splenic vein meeting this vein. So what's this vein? The superior mesenteric vein. Okay? And always right next to the superior mesenteric vein is the superior mesenteric artery. Okay? All right? So if I turn it back around so that you're looking at the anterior side, I can see my superior mesenteric vein. I can see my superior mesenteric artery. Look at all the branches, and you can even see one of the branches supplying the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. Okay? All right, so superior mesenteric artery with all of its branches, superior mesenteric vein, which is going to help form the hepatic portal vein. Okay? All right, so this should be clearer now. Okay? All right. Okay, so back to this one. All right, so I know my diaphragm is about where my stick is. Okay? And I know that these are my right and my left inferior phrenic arteries. Okay, so before this is over, you're going to remember inferior. Okay, all right. Okay, now this model makes it look like it's coming off of the celiac trunk. That's what this is. And it doesn't. The inferior phrenic arteries come off of, they are the first branches off the abdominal aorta itself. Okay? So this is a boo-boo. This is wrong. Okay? All right? So this is the celiac trunk, although I will probably never ask you that because it pisses me off that they're showing you the inferior phrenic arteries coming off of it. Okay? But I will ask you these inferior phrenic arteries. It's clear that they're going up to supply the underside of the diaphragm. Okay? All right. Then the next thing that comes off of the abdominal aorta is this big trunk also. So this is the superior mesenteric trunk. And its claim to fame, its landmark, so to speak, is that it hangs over this left renal vein. Okay? All right? So the superior mesenteric hangs over the left renal vein. The next branch off of the abdominal aorta are the gonadal arteries. So here's my right gonadal artery, here's my left gonadal artery. Okay? And these gonadal arteries have different names if you know whether it's a female or a male. So in a female, this would be the right ovarian artery, and in a male, this would be the left testicular artery. Okay? All right. Then the next branch off of the abdominal aorta is this one right here, and this is the inferior mesenteric artery. And what it supplies is the distal half of the large intestine, including the sigmoid colon and the rectum and the anal canal. Okay? All right. And then finally, my abdominal aorta ends, okay? And it's going to branch into a left common iliac artery and a right common iliac artery. So iliac is kind of like carotid. You can't ever just say iliac, and you can't ever just say carotid. You have to say common or internal or external. Okay? All right? So this is my right common iliac artery, and it's going to branch, let me find it, into a right internal iliac artery and a right external iliac artery. This external iliac artery is going to go through the inguinal canal, and once it reemerges, it's the same vessel, but now I'm going to call it the femoral artery. This is the right femoral artery. Okay? Now the veins are completely symmetrical, so this is a relief because now all I have to do is write vein instead of artery. So this is my, help me out, left. External iliac vein. Okay? And this is my left internal iliac vein. And this is my left common iliac vein. So you can't ever just say iliac. If you just say iliac, it's all the way wrong. Okay? All right. The two common iliac veins are going to drain blood from the lower extremities and then dump it into this, which is the inferior vena cava. Okay? Note on here that the inferior vena cava is on the right side of the abdominal aorta. That's a really important thing for you to remember. The inferior vena cava is on the right side of the abdominal aorta. What's an easy way to remember that? Well, I know it runs along the back side of the liver, and isn't the liver in the right upper quadrant? Mm-hmm. So that'll help you remember that the inferior vena cava is on the right side of the abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at this liver. Let's wear the liver so that you know how to orient it. Okay? So the liver has a very large right lobe and a smaller left lobe. Okay? And most of it is contained within the right upper quadrant, but a little bit of the left lobe extends into the left upper quadrant. Okay? All right, so if this is how I wear it, okay, I should be able to turn it around and see what going on its backside, the inferior vena cava, and what's draining into that inferior vena cava. The hepatic veins. The hepatic veins, draining blood away from the liver and into the inferior vena cava. To see the other blood vessels associated with the liver, I'm going to have to pull it up like this. Okay? And so then I see a purple thing, okay? And often this is colored in an odd way. So this purple thing has got to be the hepatic portal vein, okay? And then the red is the common hepatic artery, okay? So the hepatic portal vein bringing deoxygenated but nutrient-rich blood into the liver, and the common hepatic artery bringing oxygenated blood. So here are the two supplies of blood going into the liver. Leaving the liver is venous blood from in the hepatic veins going into the inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. Okay, are we good? Okay. All right. Then I want you to look at this model. I want you to look at this model, and I want you to tell me what this is.
Renal artery.
Which one?
Next.
Okay, so where is the inferior vena cava?
It's anterior.
Always on the right side of the abdominal aorta. Didn't we just say that? Okay. So you're looking at a posterior view. Now later on you'll have other cues because this is a male, and these are the seminal vesicles of the male, which are on the back side or the posterior side of the urinary bladder. You don't know that yet, so that wasn't a clue that you knew. But this is a clue that you knew. The inferior vena cava is always on the right side of the abdominal aorta. Therefore, you know you're looking at a posterior view. So this is the right renal artery, and this is the left renal artery. This is the left renal vein. What hangs over the left renal vein? The superior mesenteric artery. Okay? All right, so let's move just real quickly to this chart over here. Okay, so so let's just orient ourselves. Here's the heart, and I know the heart sits on the diaphragm, so the diaphragm's going to be right about there. So what is this big thing right here? The celiac trunk. So what's the tiniest branch coming off of the celiac trunk? The left gastric artery. And what's the biggest one? The splenic artery. And what's the one going to the right? The right, not right, just the common carotid artery. Okay. Then the next big branch off of the abdominal aorta is this right here, which is the superior mesenteric artery, or trunk. You can call it the trunk. Look at all the branches off of it going to the different parts of the small intestine and the first half of the large intestine. And what is it hanging over? The left renal vein. Okay? So that's a really good landmark to help orient you as to what you're looking at, to remember that landmark. Okay? All right, then the next branches that come off of the abdominal aorta that you have to know are these. These are the right and left gonadal arteries. And just because we're here, look at this right gonadal vein draining into my inferior vena cava, which is on the right side of the abdominal aorta. But look at the left gonadal vein. It's not draining into the inferior vena cava. It's draining into the left renal vein. That is not symmetrical. Okay, so the gonadal veins, the right one drains into the inferior vena cava. The left one drains into the left renal vein. All right. And then this last major branch off of the abdominal aorta is the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, so we have maybe 5 good minutes, and I'd like to start teaching you some of the veins of the leg. Okay? So I know that my common iliacs branch into an internal and external iliac, so these are on the right side. But as soon as this right external iliac goes through the inguinal canal, it's going to become the right femoral artery. This right femoral artery is going to continue down the anterior side of the thigh until it dives underneath some fascia. Okay, so do you see this connective tissue, the covering? Okay. As soon as it dives through that fascia, sometimes it dives through the fascia here, sometimes it dives through the fascia here. It doesn't matter. In any one person, wherever it dives through that fascia and reappears on the back side of the thigh, now I'm going to call it the popliteal artery. Okay, so this happens to be a left leg. It's actually a right leg because they did stupid mare things, and we're not going to consider mares, so don't read that part of the chart. We're just looking at this from behind, so this is going to be a left leg. Are you okay with that? Okay, all right. So this is my left popliteal artery, and it's going to come down, and it's going to divide into an artery that goes straight down to the heel, This is the posterior tibial artery, okay? And one that is going to be more lateral, following the fibula, the lateral bone of the leg. So this is going to be the left fibular artery or peroneal artery. Okay? All right? And then you can see there's another branch that is coming off of this popliteal artery, and it's coming around to the front. It comes laterally, and then it runs down the front of the leg. And this is the anterior tibial artery. Okay, so this anterior tibial artery is a deep artery, and it has two deep veins associated with it. So these are the two tiny anterior tibial veins, right? Just remember how the upper extremity was set up? So I had a radial artery and two tiny radial arteries around it. I had an ulnar artery and two tiny ulnar veins around it, right? Okay. So I said that wrong. I have the radial artery and two tiny radial veins around it. I have the ulnar artery and two tiny ulnar veins around it. Okay. Here's my anterior tibial artery and two tiny anterior tibial veins around it. Okay. Same with this. Here's the red one is my posterior tibial artery, and I have two tiny posterior tibial veins around it. Okay. All right. Here's my peroneal or fibular artery, and I have two tiny peroneal or fibular veins around it. Okay. All right. These deep veins drain into the popliteal vein. Once the popliteal vein goes through that fashion, now I'm going to call it the femoral vein. Once it goes through the inguinal canal, now I'm going to call it this is the right external iliac vein. Okay? All right. But like the upper extremity, the lower extremity has superficial veins as well. Okay? There are only two that you have to know. One is called the great saphenous vein because it starts here in the foot and it comes up the medial side of the leg. Here it is, coming up the medial side of the leg, and it keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going until it drains superficially, going deep into the femoral vein. So this is the great saphenous vein, this vein right here. Okay? It's superficial all the way till the upper thigh, and then it's going to dive deep to join the femoral vein. Okay? All right. There's also a small saphenous vein. The small saphenous vein starts in the heel. And then see how close it is to the surface? Here's the skin. See how close it is to the surface? It's going to come up and drain into the popliteal vein. So it doesn't go as far up. So that's why I call it the small saphenous vein. Okay? And the leg, that's it. I mean, what you have to know about the leg is super easy. You just have to know the names of the deep arteries and the names of the deep veins which surround those arteries and have the same name, vein except of artery. And you have to know these two superficial veins. What is this one?
Small saphenous
vein, and this is the
great
saphenous vein draining into the femoral vein. Okay? All right. Okay. Let's talk about some of the ins and outs of the upper extremity. I won't ask you on this arm because it's all twisted, and I don't think we need to deal with twisted things in a beginning class. Okay? All right? But this is a very straightforward left upper extremity in anatomical position. Okay? All right? So I know that this red thing right here above the clavicle, this has got to be my left subclavian artery. And once it passes the clavicle, now I'm going to call it the left axillary artery. And once it passes that intertubercular sulcus of my humerus, now I'm going to call it the left brachial artery. That left brachial artery is going to come down and it's going to branch into, what's the red one?
Radial.
That's the left radial artery on the thumb side and the left ulnar artery on the little pinky side. Okay, so that's all the arteries that you have to know of the upper extremity. The two tiny, now we're going to do the deep veins. The two tiny veins on either side of the ulnar artery are the two ulnar veins. The two tiny veins on either side of this red radial artery are the two radial veins. Okay? Now, when I come to the brachial vein, it's really hard to see both of them, okay? And you might wonder about that, why I say that, but let's do the superficial veins first. So coming up laterally, so I'm just follow it with my stick, coming up laterally and draining into the axillary vein is the cephalic vein. Okay? Coming up medially, and I can't pick it all the way up, but here we go. This is the basilic, okay? Now, if you get up here like this, you can see that there's a light color, which is the basilic, and a dark blue color, which is the brachial vein. So there are two tiny brachial veins on either side of this brachial artery. It's just that it's color-coded on this chart. So if I'm going to ask you a brachial vein, I'm going to ask it on this side. I'm not going to ask it on this side, okay? All right, are we good with that? Okay, all right. So these two tiny brachial veins and this basilic vein are going to come together right here, three B's making an A. So what does this A? The left axillary vein. And once the left axillary vein goes underneath the clavicle, now I'm going to call it the subclavian vein. And then it's going to meet this left internal jugular vein, and then the two of them are going to form the left brachiocephalic vein. This is the external jugular vein draining into the subclavian vein, which is now covered up by this clavicle. Okay. All right, so let's do it on this side. Here's the right internal jugular vein meeting the right subclavian vein to form the right brachiocephalic vein. So what's this?
External.
The right external jugular vein, which drains into the subclavian vein. Okay, all right. And what is this right here? This is the right vertebral artery, and I have one on the left side as well. And these vertebral arteries supply about 20% of the oxygen to the brain, whereas the main 80% of the blood going to the brain is in the two
Internal carotids.
carotid arteries that don't branch. Okay? All right.
And just back to the arm, what part is, I was always confused, is the antecubital?
Okay, so you look for the cephalic, and you look for the basilic, and then you look for a way for the cephalic to drain into the basilic. Okay? Cephalic, basilic. Do you see how this is the way that the cephalic can drain into the basilic? So this is one of the things I asked on the quiz today. Okay? That's the antecubital vein, or the left median cubital vein. You can call it either one. And that's where people usually draw blood, because it's very superficial. Okay?
That's all we have time for today.